Why a relapse becomes a binge. If you're on a streak from watching porn, if you're staying away and you're doing really well, but out of the blue, you have a slip or a relapse and it becomes a binge, I want you to know why. I answer this question for my clients all the time. I'm Dr. Trish Leigh, brain health and sex addiction recovery coach. I'm here to help you on your porn-free brain forever journey. So if you're trying to stay away from porn, what will happen is you will have cravings and urges to satisfy those cravings due to your brain wanting high levels of dopamine like it's used to getting from the supernormal stimulus of porn. We know that pornography is what they call the cardboard butterfly effect. It is a supernormal stimulus that floods your brain with dopamine, giving you that surge and making you feel good. Now, if you're trying to stay away from that, your brain will want it. So that's what will give you the cravings and the urges. Now, if you don't give in and you're not necessarily rewiring your brain, you're likely in the unwire process, which is great. Except for you need to rewire your brain so that you won't have cravings and urges anymore. So let's say you give in to an urge. What happens in that moment is the moment you have the idea that you're going to watch porn, you get a dopamine drip in your brain. You'll get that dopamine flowing and it's going to remind you how good it used to feel. It's not going to remind you that it's damaging your brain and that it's likely wreaking havoc in your life, but it's going to remind you how good it feels. You have 3 seconds to pivot away from that dopamine drip, or it becomes the next D in the 4D dopamine cycle, the dopamine deluge. That's a flood of dopamine into your body, into your brain, into your system. You will get this flood of dopamine and it's going to make you feel good. Now, that dopamine is much higher levels than healthy levels from real life activities. Plus, your brain, if you've watched porn consistently, frequently, and especially with any level of intensity, meaning genres or acts or edging, what we know is that your brain has likely developed a dopamine dependency. So you're dependent upon high levels of dopamine. So you've been staying away from them and you've probably been feeling better. But the minute you got the drip, it's going to want the deluge. Once you get the deluge, it's going to want the third D in the cycle, the dopamine drowning. When you drown your brain out in dopamine, now it's completely flooded. And then this is what happens. The fourth D is the dopamine deficit. That's what happens when you go back to your life and there's not high levels of dopamine there. So in this 4D cycle, your brain inherently is going to want to start going back through the cycle again because now you're in a dopamine deficit state. So if you've stayed away from the cycle for a really long time, once you hit the drowning, the chaser effect will kick in. And the chaser effect is essentially once you've given your brain high levels of dopamine, it's going to want more and more and more and more. It's going to want as much as it can possibly get out of this relapse. Addiction's a tricky thing. It's slick. It's going to make you think everything is a brilliant idea, but instead everything's a bad idea. So you will feel another urge to go back for more. Now, we call dopamine the molecule of more motivation and pleasure. It's going to motivate you very quickly back for more pleasure from where you got it. And as far as addiction goes, it's because your brain's telling you, you said you weren't going to do it and you're doing it. So let's get the most out of it that we can. So many times what happens is you'll just keep going until you hit an exhaustion point. Your brain has been so flooded, the dopamine receptors in your brain have been so desensitized that you don't even want any more dopamine. You're satiated, which dopamine is not easy to be satiated. It takes a lot. That is why a relapse becomes a binge. Now, what can you do about it? Once you get the dopamine dripping and flooding, it can be very difficult to come out of the 4D cycle. That's what I want you to know. So your brain hack strategy today is if you're on a streak, do whatever you need to stay on that streak. Count it day by day if that works for you. Celebrate it week by week if that's what works for you. Get an accountability partner. Join a group that can support you, that you can call someone when you have that crave or urging, and you can talk with that support person until it passes. It will pass. This too shall pass. And once it passes and you're still on your streak, you're going to be so psyched, because if you give into the drip, you will likely move all the way through the 4D cycle, except for this time, it might have the chaser effect, which means you'll be on a binge. And when you wake up from that binge, you will have regret. I don't want you to wake up with that regret, especially if you're doing an awesome job right now. So if you feel that drip, you run. You don't walk. You run in the opposite direction and you trick your brain. It's a brain hack. You're going to trick your brain in this one. You go do something that you love, that's exciting, that gives your brain dopamine from your life. You trick your brain into thinking that that drip is from your life, not from the screen. And you will rewire your brain back into your life, into your hobbies, into your work, into your relationships, and make sure it's exciting, because dopamine swapping like this isn't the easiest thing to do, because remember, porn is a supernormal stimulus. Anything that you get from your life, even if it's a high stimulus like skydiving, it's still a quote unquote normal or healthy stimulus. That's a really high one. If it's boxing like I like to do, that's going to be up there, but it's not going to be the supernormal stimulus of porn. Run, don't walk, so you can stay on that streak. High five yourself when you get done. I know you can do this. I know you want it. Stay away from the relapse so it doesn't become a binge. All right, keep rocking it out. Until next time, control your brain or it'll control you.